Not only did you have a growth rate of 4.3%, interest rates went down, full-time jobs went up. Just dumb luck, George?
Well, it's not dumb luck. I mean, the Australian economy is outperforming the rest of the world. I mean, I've been banging on about this for years, and everybody says, but the national mood is sour. Well, I'm going to put the national mood to one side and actually give you a very quick run-through of where Australia sits compared to the rest of the world. People in Europe, when they do witness our domestic politics, start to wonder why Australians beating up on themselves. There's no other country in the world you would want to be at the moment if you're in a first world democracy. Leave to one side, as I say, leave to one side the national mood. We can discuss that in a sec. The fundamentals of the Australian economy is pretty much every Western nation is going through a version of the same thing. Borrowed too much in the noughties, now have to start paying back debt. We're the only country in the world where the household sector is able to pay back its debt whilst the economy is growing, whilst people are still getting jobs. It's not a bad place to be.
It'd be interesting to see where these figures end up, actually, because the Bureau of Stats revises these figures later in the month, and we have seen in the last couple of months a revision that does send the figures in a different direction. Now, whether it could be as dramatic a revision as to make them not look sensational the way they were, I don't know. But some analysts are saying maybe that the figures aren't actually as good as they were.
Only because I was surprised. Look, the big gap, the GDP is measured two ways. It's measured by production. It's just the physical production of goods and delivery of services. And there's an income measure of GDP. The income measure of GDP is out of whack with the production measure, and it's been out of whack twice. Once during the GFC and once in the last couple of quarters. Now, what does income measure of GDP tell you? It's the story of profits, it's the story of superannuation fund earnings, it's the story of capital gains. That affects the budget bottom line. And so, whilst the government might be cheering the production measure, which shows that production of goods and services is motoring along, and the rest of the world says, how good is Australia? Right. The budget bottom line is actually a little less healthy today because of this surprising number on the upside.
But it really underlines this issue of confidence, doesn't it? Because the figures are fantastic. I mean, the opposition was kind of gobsmacked. They didn't.
George is saying that some figures are okay.
Hang on, Pete. The word extraordinary, because that's an adjective that's open to interpretation, I guess, when he said extraordinary. But Joe Hockey was interviewed by Bloomberg during the week. Now, that's going out to an international audience, so you get stuff like this.
Well, look, Australia is in a better position than most other Western nations. We have an unemployment rate of around 5%. We have strong demand for our commodities, and even though they probably won't get there, we have a government that at least is promising to deliver a surplus budget.
Now, of course, that wasn't so hard when you think about it, because he's selling the country to an international audience. But Glenn Stevens then picks up on the point that you raised about the national mood, George. We'll even